normal people, earth walkers, mere mortals. Reach up to the stars with me. This is Letters to Celebrity!
It's like Twin Peaks. Look at that smiling idiot.
In this episode, I reach up to Lil Wayne. Dear Lil Wayne, you know the writer David Foster Wallace? Well, when he died, I could have died too. My buddy gave me a bottle of promethazine codeine syrup that he was prescribed for a throat infection, and he didn't want it because opiates make him nauseous, and he knew that just like you, I love that shit. Scissorup. See, it was no secret that I loved opiates of any kind. I loved them so much that for many years I often ordered hundreds and hundreds of dried poppy pods off of eBay, and then I would crush them up and make a disgusting, viscous green tea that tasted like mud. I was the only one who would drink this tea because it tasted so bad, it was very gross looking, and it usually had that effect of making you sick to your stomach, the way most opiates do. Anyway, how I discovered that one could make a drug tea out of dried poppy pods and order them on eBay was that I read an article about a dude who got hooked on poppy pod tea, and it fucked up his life royally, until the point where he was alone in a hotel room using that little shitty plastic coffee machine to make the last of his poppy pod tea after having lost his wife, kids, job, house, all that stuff. And what I got out of the article was, holy shit, you can make your own opiate tea? And pills are expensive, and to get them reliably, you have to buy them from drug dealers. And I hated dealing with drug dealers, skinny men who wear bandanas and drive motorcycles and own snakes and have tribal tattoos, and you go to their house and they have like scary amounts of cash around, and sometimes they have guns. This was more of a rural Ohio coke dealer thing, but that's where this all started. So anyway, I preferred ordering my opiates on eBay. I mean, when I had the chance, I still used pills, but I usually had to get them from friends and girlfriends with prescriptions. That is, until I couldn't in good conscience keep asking said friends, who had real pain issues for their prescriptions, if I could snag a few more pills before, just hitting the bar. Nah, because that would be pathetic, to ask friends in pain for their pain pills. However, you can get around the shame of asking for pills by stealing them. Stealing from friends, obviously this sucks, but it's what you do to get high when you are broke and a liar. So basically how this works is you just look at the pill bottle in question that you probably took out of a purse or something, and if it is a drug you have not heard of, well, now you can just Google it. But then the best guide for me was basically if there was a warning about causing drowsiness, or if the bottle told you not to mix this prescription with alcohol, well, I assumed it was what I wanted, and that I would probably mix it with alcohol. Okay, so now you know you want the pill, so what do? You get a visual sense of how many would go unnoticed, and if they are for sure going to notice, you have to figure out if they are the type of friend to call you out on your bullshit, Or are they the type of friend to just not want to deal with your bullshit and how sad and selfish you actually are, and they would rather just kind of let you steal and then go on to get a refill later? But anyway, so for years, off and on, I was doing the whole gross poppy pod tea thing, and drinking, and smoking weed, and throwing up. If you do opiates, even if you have a strong stomach like I guess I do, you will throw up a lot. It's just part of it. I can remember waking up, running from my bed, knowing what was about to happen, and then just throwing up all over a wall in the middle of the night. Good times, right? So, what a treat it was to get some scissorup, a full bottle. And at the time, the whole chopped and screwed thing was happening, and you were rapping about it, and DJs were dying from it. So, I didn't tell anyone else about it because I didn't want to share. I just poured it a little bit at a time into a flask and took it to the bar with me. And one of these nights, at the bar, an ex-girlfriend called me to tell me that the writer David Foster Wallace killed himself. And he was my favorite writer at the time. I was even in the middle of reading his short story book, Oblivion, when I got the news. And this bummed me the fuck out. Because I was a fucked up 24-year-old with an insecurity complex, and it seemed to me that whereas all my other heroes were saying that the more drugs and booze I consumed, the closer to death and misery I got, the cooler and more interesting I was. David Foster Wallace was trying to say something else with his giant overhyped book. He was sharp and exciting, and I thought he was telling me directly that, yes, it's all fucked up, but you can be better if you are willing to give up the cliches and or maybe accept some healthier cliches. And I think when I read him, I saw a future where maybe one day I could give up drugs, because maybe then I'd be smarter or better. And then he killed himself. Which to me, at the time, changed the meaning of his giant book. It seemed to me that after he died, his book meant that you could quit drugs and booze and write the best work of the modern age, and still everything would be unbearable. And I thought to myself, if he was gonna hang himself, why not just fucking have a drink beforehand? Why not just eat 20 tabs of LSD and see if he still wants to kill himself? Why not go on a heroin and meth bender in Vegas first? Maybe I thought to myself, it was because I'd misread Infinite Jest. Maybe he wasn't saying it's all fucked up and quitting drugs can make it better. Maybe he was saying it's all fucked up and even if you quit drugs, it's still a fucking nightmare. You could honestly read that book and take away either message, or both. It's a sad book. So, me and some buddies did the dumb thing of drinking a lot to deal with the death of a man who wrote almost exclusively about how negatively drugs and alcohol can affect the human brain. And I got home and passed out and woke up with just enough time to lean my head over the bed and throw up on the floor, on some clothes and the carpet, in my buddy's basement, where I was sleeping at the time. And I was shocked and spinning and sick, and I remembered why I was throwing up. I remembered the scissorup and David Foster Wallace and the bar. What I didn't consider at that moment was all the other famous dead people who died from vomiting in their sleep, who choked to death on their own bile while passed out under the influence of opiates and alcohol. In that haze, it didn't even occur to me because I wasn't famous. I wasn't like them. I was alive. I just woke up long enough to throw up on the floor, feel sorry for myself for a few seconds, and then immediately pass out again. And obviously, I didn't choke and die that night. I continued to do drugs and drink for many, many more years after that. I kept stealing drugs and buying drugs and throwing up beer off and on whenever I could, or a girlfriend had a prescription, or a buddy got some leftover morphine from a dead grandparent, and we would binge and I would throw up. And I kept living and kept not being famous, and Philip Seymour Hoffman died, and Harris Whittles died, and my buddy's cousin Al died from opiate overdoses, and my friend Eddie died, and lots of people keep dying. And I feel bad, because I didn't die. The same way that I felt bad when David Foster Wallace hung himself. I didn't know him, and I hadn't heard of Harris Whittles' comedy until after he died. I learned his name in a eulogy. The same way, he might not have really known about Mitch Hedberg before he died from heroin. Hell, I didn't even really know my buddy's cousin. I'd only met him once. And I don't really know if anyone really knew my friend Eddie. Not really. But I knew and know the emptiness, and I know about trying to fill it up, and trying and trying and trying and failing and failing and failing. And I know about wanting to just quit and hang myself up on a rope. I know about getting sick of it all and getting sick of getting sick of it all. And I know about feeling like a cliche and feeling dumb for crying over a celebrity death. And I know that we are all cliches, and in that sense, none of us are. And when we cry over the death of an entertainer, a stranger, a drug addict, a troubled suicidal depressive, we cry over a universal sickness that plagues us all in varying degrees. It's a sickness you can't throw up or drink away, and I know that because I've tried. I've tried to drown it. I've tried sticking my fingers down my throat to purge the spinning wretchedness. I've tried to mourn it and celebrate it and forget it, but it's there. Maybe you have a handle on it. That's the best most can do, but it is there somewhere, lurking. David Foster Wallace wrote, "Everybody is identical in their secret unspoken belief that way deep down they are different from everyone else." I think that's why I felt real physical pain when these guys died, because they are the same as me, and they died. Funnier, more talented, smarter maybe, but deep down, when you look at their day-to-day, they were just working, resting, puking, crying, laughing. They were me, and they are dead. And that can seem unbearable, impossible even, and yet here I am, burying it, feeling silly for writing about dead celebrities, but burying it. Nothing humbles me more than embarrassment. So being embarrassed can be good for me. It reminds me why I stay sober, because fear of accidentally killing yourself will help you stop, but eventually you'll get braver, and the only thing that really sticks with you is the shame and embarrassment of your past. So there it is. That's why I just wrote to you, the greatest rapper alive, about throwing up off the side of my bed. Maybe that's partially why I didn't die that night or so many other nights like it. I am alive so as to be truly and openly embarrassed. Love, Brian. P.S. I've been dreaming about alcohol, been abstaining from ethanol, been having nightmares about having beers with old friends and comedians, and I don't know what I'm doing, can't remember what I've done, I'm just sick of